Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The kitchen lights were dim that evening, soft amber spilling across the marble counter, making everything look warmer, more dangerous. The sound of the rain tapping against the window filled the silence between us, the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. I stood there, barefoot, my heart drumming against my ribs as he leaned on the other side of the counter, his sleeves rolled up, his gaze fixed on me, not with anger, not even curiosity, but something far deeper. It started with a small touch. His fingers brushed mine as he reached for the cup beside me. Just that. But the air shifted. My breath caught. Time seemed to thicken between us, each second stretching, pulling, teasing. His eyes searched mine, as if asking a question neither of us was brave enough to say out loud. I don't even remember moving. 1 second I was standing, the next I was on the counter, feeling the cool stone beneath me and the warmth of him closing in. My hands found his shoulders almost instinctively, and before I could think, my legs wrapped around his waist, pulling him closer. The smell of his skin, soap, spice, and a trace of coffee wrapped around me like a confession. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Every breath felt like a secret exchanged in the dark. The kitchen clock ticked faintly somewhere behind us, the rain outside whispering against the glass. His hands rested on my thighs, firm but trembling slightly, as though he, too, was caught in this spell neither of us had planned to cast. And then, he stopped. Just like that. His face only inches from mine, his breath fanning across my lips. His eyes held a storm, half desire, half hesitation. I could feel the question trembling in the air between us, should we? But before either of us could answer, before that moment could break or bloom, the sound of the front door opening sliced through the stillness. My heart froze. And that's when everything changed. The sound of the front door closing echoed faintly, but neither of us moved. It was as if time itself hesitated, holding its breath between what was right and what was real. His hands were still resting against the counter beside me, tense, uncertain. I could see his throat move as he swallowed, his jaw tight as if fighting some invisible pull. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. My voice came out softer than I intended, like the air itself didn't want to disturb the fragile magic in the room. He nodded slowly, eyes never leaving mine. "Yeah," he murmured, "but I don't care right now." Something about those words, low, rough, unguarded, sent a shiver through me. The distance between us dissolved. His breath brushed my cheek, hot and uneven. I could feel the warmth of his chest against my knees, the pulse in his wrist where my fingers rested without even realizing it. The room smelled faintly of rain and coffee and something else, something alive. Every sound seemed sharper, the ticking clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the rhythm of our breathing weaving together like a secret song. He reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from my face. The gesture was innocent enough, but the way his thumb lingered near my lips told another story. I looked up at him, and our eyes met again, only this time, there was no mistaking what lived behind that gaze. It wasn't just attraction. It was history. Years of laughter, arguments, whispered apologies, and unspoken longing, all tangled into this one heartbeat of a moment. I felt his hand slide down, tracing the edge of my arm, stopping at my wrist. My skin tingled where he touched me, like sparks under the surface. I should have said something, broken the spell, but I didn't. Neither did he. The silence grew heavier, thicker, as if daring us to cross the line we both saw so clearly. The rain outside turned to a steady downpour, drumming against the window in perfect rhythm with my racing heart. He leaned in, so close that I could count his eyelashes, feel the tremor in his breath. The world seemed to tilt, gravity itself pulling us closer. And just before our lips could meet, something in the house creaked, sharp and sudden. We froze. Whatever was about to happen, hovered right there, trembling on the edge of the moment. For a long, breathless moment, neither of us dared to move. The air between us was heavy, trembling, alive. His face hovered just a whisper away from mine, our breaths mingling, shallow and uneven. Every heartbeat felt amplified, thudding loud enough to drown out the rain outside. His fingers grazed the edge of the counter beside my hips, steadying himself. Mine clutched the fabric of his shirt without meaning to, like I needed something solid to hold on to. The warmth of him seeped into me, slow and consuming, making my pulse stutter in my throat. Maybe we should stop, I managed to whisper, but even I didn't sound convinced. My voice was thin, trembling like a flame fighting the wind. He closed his eyes for a second, jaw tightening. Maybe, he said, but his hands didn't move away. They lingered, one at my waist, the other brushing along my thigh, hesitant yet hungry for the truth of the moment. The kitchen lights flickered as thunder rolled outside, shadows dancing across his face. Everything about him, his closeness, his scent, the faint tremor in his breath, made the world feel smaller, more dangerous. He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine. The contact was simple, almost innocent, but it carried the weight of everything we'd been avoiding for too long. I could feel his breath on my lips, warm and unsteady. He wasn't speaking anymore, he didn't need to. The silence said it all, the wanting, the fear, the ache of restraint. My hands slid up to his shoulders, feeling the tension coiled beneath his skin, the quiet war between will and desire. The rain outside grew louder, pounding against the window like a heartbeat echoing our own. The scent of wet earth drifted in through the half-open pane, mixing with the warmth of our nearness. He tilted his head, just slightly, and my breath caught. Our lips didn't touch, but they could have. The distance was barely a sigh. The space between us pulsed with everything we weren't saying, everything we weren't supposed to feel. It was dangerous. It was intoxicating. It was the edge of something neither of us could take back. And just as the moment threatened to break, he whispered, almost pleading, "Tell me to stop." But I didn't. I couldn't. The air had turned molten, thick with a heat that words couldn't cool. Every breath felt stolen, every movement deliberate, trembling on the border between reason and desire. The kitchen, once ordinary and calm, now pulsed like a heartbeat, alive with the echo of something neither of us could name, but both could feel. His hand slid up the small of my back, slow enough for me to feel each finger's trail, leaving sparks in their wake. My breath hitched, I didn't dare move. My skin tingled as though the air itself was touching me. He drew in a deep breath, his chest rising and falling against my knees, the sound low and unsteady, almost a growl held back by will alone. "Say something," he murmured, voice rough, almost pleading. But I couldn't. My throat was dry, my thoughts tangled in the storm brewing between us. I looked at him, really looked, and saw that same battle raging in his eyes. Every line of his face was tight with restraint, with hunger, with fear of what might happen if he gave even an inch. The thunder outside cracked loud enough to make me jump, and his hand reflexively gripped my waist, hard, grounding, possessive. That single motion undid something inside me. My hand reached for him, fingers brushing along the line of his jaw, tracing the edge of his control. Our eyes locked, and for a heartbeat there was no sound, no light, no distance, only that electric pull, that invisible thread drawing us closer, tighter, deeper. His lips parted as if to speak, but instead, a soft, shaky exhale escaped him. My fingers trembled as they rested against his chest, I could feel his heart pounding beneath my palm, fast and desperate, matching mine beat for beat. He leaned forward, just enough that I could feel the warmth of his breath grazing my cheek. Every inch between us became a battlefield, desire against discipline, longing against logic. His voice came out barely a whisper, "If I start, I won't stop." And yet, he didn't move away. Neither did I. The lights flickered again, thunder growled in the distance, and the moment stretched like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap, to ignite, to shatter the stillness in a way that would change everything. It was the edge. The last breath before the fall. The thunder cracked again, this time closer, sharper, like the sky itself had lost its patience. I flinched, but his hand caught mine midair, firm and protective. The sound of rain beating against the window grew wild, echoing the storm inside us. His eyes locked with mine, dark, heavy, full of things we hadn't dared to say aloud. And then, just as the world felt ready to burst, a sudden sound sliced through the tension. The faint click of the front door. We froze. Every muscle in my body tensed. The door creaked open, and a soft voice floated down the hallway. "Honey? You home?" My stomach dropped. His eyes went wide, panic flashing across his face before being quickly buried beneath a practiced calm. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might shake the counter beneath me. It was his sister. She wasn't supposed to be back for another day. He turned toward the hallway, his expression torn, half guilt, half frustration. I grabbed his wrist, silently pleading, "Don't move." Not yet. The kitchen light seemed too bright now, every shadow too revealing. We didn't breathe as her footsteps echoed closer, slow and casual, completely unaware of the electric storm she was walking into. I slid off the counter in one quiet motion, but my foot caught the edge of the cabinet. The soft thud that followed was small, but to us, it sounded like an explosion. He winced. She paused. "Is someone there?" she called out. My pulse jumped into my throat. We exchanged a look, a single, charged glance that carried every ounce of the tension we'd built, now mixed with fear and disbelief. It wasn't just about being caught. It was about what being caught would mean. He whispered, barely audible, "Go upstairs. Now." But I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy, my breath shallow. There was too much, too many feelings trapped between us, too many moments that couldn't be undone. He stepped closer, his hand hovering at my back like he might guide me, but his fingers lingered instead, unable to let go. Then, as if to mock our chaos, the power flickered and went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, leaving only the faint silver of lightning cutting through the window. And in that flash of light, our eyes met again. For a heartbeat, the world was made of shadows and breath and everything we weren't supposed to want. The storm outside howled, rattling the glass, while silence burned inside us. Her footsteps stopped just outside the kitchen door. "Hello," she said again, more uncertain this time. He stepped away at last, just a few inches, but it felt like a chasm. "Yeah," he called out, his voice too casual to be real. "Just cleaning up. I'll be there in a second." When the lightning flashed again, I saw his face drawn, conflicted, and burning. He mouthed, "Don't leave." And even though I knew I should, I didn't move. I couldn't. Because the storm inside had only just begun. The world seemed to hold its breath. The rain had softened to a whisper, the thunder fading into distant growls, but inside that kitchen, everything was trembling. The storm outside had passed, yet the one within us was just beginning to break. He stood there, only a few feet away, every muscle in his body drawn tight, his chest rising and falling like he was fighting to stay in control. I could still hear his sister's faint hum from the other room, close enough to remind us that we were on dangerous ground, far enough for danger to feel like temptation itself. Our eyes met again, and something snapped. He crossed the space between us in a heartbeat, his hand finding my face, my breath catching as the distance disappeared. There was nothing gentle about it now, just raw honesty, months of buried emotion tearing free all at once. His touch was desperate, trembling, full of everything he hadn't said. I could feel the battle in him, the pull between right and wrong, the ache between restraint and surrender. "Why do we keep pretending?" I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. His jaw clenched. "Because once we stop, there's no going back." But neither of us stopped. The tension cracked open like thunder, urgent, uncontainable, consuming. The world blurred to the rhythm of our hearts, the scent of rain and coffee and something electric in the air. It wasn't just desire, it was years of emotion finding its escape, the kind that left you breathless and alive. Then, just as fast as it came, it all shattered. The light flickered back on. And standing in the doorway, wide-eyed and silent, was his sister. The sound of her gasp sliced through the air like a knife. I froze, breath catching mid-sentence, as he spun around, too late. The expression on her face wasn't anger. It was heartbreak. A kind of recognition that made the room colder than the rain outside. She didn't say a word. She just turned and walked away. He stood there motionless, staring after her, the silence stretching like a wound that wouldn't close. I reached for him, but he didn't move. His shoulders sank, and for the first time, I saw regret flicker behind his eyes. The storm had finally broken. But what it left behind was something none of us were ready for. The kitchen was quiet again, too quiet. The storm had passed, leaving only the soft dripping of rain from the window ledge and the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. The golden light, once warm and flickering, now felt like a confession spilled across the floor. He stood by the counter, head bowed, hands pressed flat against the marble as if he could anchor himself to something real. I watched him, my pulse still unsteady, my heart aching with everything that had just happened, and everything that could no longer be undone. His sister's footsteps had faded hours ago, but the echo of that door closing still lingered in the air like an accusation neither of us could silence. I wanted to speak, to reach for him, to ask what came next, but the words wouldn't come. There was too much between us, the fire that burned too bright, the silence that followed, the love that could no longer hide behind stolen moments. Finally, he turned to me. His eyes looked different now, tired, tender, stripped of all pretense. "We can't go back," he said softly. I nodded, my throat tight. "No," I whispered. "But we can't pretend it didn't happen either." He stepped closer, hesitating just long enough for me to feel the weight of his choice. His fingers brushed mine, once, lightly, reverently. It wasn't lust this time. It was something deeper. The kind of touch that said I'll remember you, even when everything else fades. Outside, the clouds began to break, letting a fragile dawn spill into the room. The light fell across his face, soft and forgiving, painting us in a quiet kind of beauty that hurt to look at. He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth trembling like he wanted to say something brave, but chose silence instead. I turned toward the window, breathing in the scent of rain and ending storms. Maybe this was how it had to be, not a fairy tale, not a scandal, just two souls who collided too close to the flame and survived to tell the tale. When I looked back, he was still watching me, that same lingering fire alive in his gaze. And for the first time, it didn't scare me. It felt like truth. The kind that never really ends, only changes its shape.